Welcome to NLP Conversations with Keith and Aaron. Just a short note, there are a few disruptions to the Skype Connect during this, which also includes a significant gap of about 10 seconds, and then later on we lose all video of myself, that's Aaron, and so you'll just see Keith. However, the content is still good, and we hope you get as much enjoyment from it as we do from sharing it. So keep watching and enjoy. We're recording. This is Aaron McLaughlin in Christchurch, New Zealand.
And Keith Gilbert in Sydney, Australia.
So we're going to continue a discussion that we always start with a giggle, don't we? It's quite funny. All right, well, yeah. So where were we going, Keith?
Well, you've given me a little bit of a story, something that a concern that you want to work with.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it content free. So
let's do it.
Yeah. So for our viewers, the idea of content free means that Aaron can keep any personal stuff to himself. He doesn't have to divulge any content. So it protects Aaron, and which means by that I mean we don't have to delve into content, which means we don't get lost in the story. It also protects me. So which means that I don't. Yeah, it protects me because I don't get lost in interpretation. And if we work with pure process, we won't get lost in the story. We won't get sidetracked. So, Aaron, you've got something you want to generate more choice for yourself, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So, are you aware of context in which this occurs?
Yeah, I think, yep.
Yep. Are you aware of, you have those contexts, are you aware of just before this sort of thing happens in your life? So there are contexts in which you're immersed in this particular concern.
Yep.
Are you aware of just before it happens?
Yep.
Yep?
Yes.
Okay. What's your experience of just before? How would you describe that? Do you see anything? Do you hear anything? Do you feel anything?
Yes, see. Almost, I think, see and feel at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So synesthesia, isn't it? Like
synesthesia.
Seeing and feeling simultaneously. I'm not sure, though, with clarity what I'm exactly seeing. And yet I've got a sense that it's interesting because it's quite far away.
Okay.
So it's almost like I'm compelled to get closer to it.
Oh. Okay.
Does that make sense? So it's almost, it's like a compulsion blowout, where they take it away to test if you have a compulsion. It almost feels like it's sort of over there, and I'm kind of want that.
Want that. So it's over there, and you kind of want that, and the kind of want that is an internal dialogue. That feeling that you mentioned in terms of the seeing and the feeling happening at the same time.
No, it's more of a feeling like a
feeling
impulse.
I want that.
Yeah, wanting to move towards it.
So where is it? Is it between your shoulder blades, or
no? It's like it's out there.
Or you're just being drawn towards it.
Just drawn towards it, because it's really interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
So where's the feeling throughout your body? Is it localized?
It's actually more. It's kind of quite visceral, but it's actually quite here, and there's a real kind of almost like a raised heart, like the heart gets excited or kind of the heart starts racing a little bit with it. Yeah.
Okay. So the heart's racing, and there's this sense that you're moving forward.
Yeah.
It's all around your chest. If you keep that sensation for the time being, and that image over there, what happens if you draw the image towards you, or whether you go towards the image? Do both. What do you notice?
There's a slight heightening, and then it drops. The heart.
Yep.
So there's a sort of like...
For which one? You've drawn it towards you?
Either way, it doesn't matter. So it's like if I bring it closer or move closer, it's kind of like this. It kind of goes, ooh, and then it kind of like, okay, well, this is going to happen.
Okay?
Yeah, and then
content. Something's going to happen. What?
Yeah, and then there's kind of, I guess it's kind of like ice.
Oh, the drop is going to happen. Is that what you mean?
No. The realization of the promise is going to happen.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is something that you want to happen.
Not anymore.
Okay. That's okay. Fascinating. If it's distant, if there's a slight move toward it, or if you draw it slightly towards you, there's a heightening of the physical, and there's a certain threshold that as you get closer, it drops off.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't drop off completely, but I guess what I'm saying is like there's a excitement, then it peaks as it's as I'm mentally moving towards this thing, but then there's a point where, okay, this doesn't reduce it, but now it's kind of, how do you say it? I don't know. It's like, stupid analogy would be like, oh, I can't wait to have ice cream. Oh, we're getting in the car to go and get ice cream. Oh, how exciting, and then but we're sitting outside the ice cream store. Okay, well now we know we're going to have it, but they're still excited, but it's not the same level.
Yeah.
And you still,
So
have your ice cream, and it's great, and it's, all that stuff, and then once it's done, oh, okay, off home.
Would it be accurate to say that the anticipation is perhaps more enjoyable than the getting close to this thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you put yourself back in that dip? So you've brought it towards you, or you're moving closer towards it. There's this heightened sense. I use the word anticipation, so if that's appropriate, good. If not, you can choose your own. So there's this heightened sense, and then it dips. Can you come back up that little hill back to the heightened sense?
Yep.
Okay. And the image is wherever it is. It's slightly closer, so you're at this heightened sense.
Yep.
And that's all through the chest?
And it also, the image becomes just slightly clearer, or more, maybe, clearer, sharper, I think the word
sharper?
is. Yeah, sharper.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not seeing it very clearly, but there's a sense that it gets sharper.
Okay. So you don't know what it is, but it's getting sharper.
Yep.
Do you need to know what it is?
No. Not really.
Okay. So you've come slightly back up the dip to the top of that heightened sense. So just be in that heightened sense. Notice where it is in your body. It's localized, I think, throughout your chest. Your heart is lifted.
Oh, damn. I just shifted it to black and white, and it just dropped. No, I'm so sorry. I went on auto.
These damn coaches. Put it back to color, quick. Just out of curiosity, what was the purpose of changing it to black and white?
I don't know. I felt compelled to just go. I think it's just. I mean, my mind is always going, well, how do I emerge out of this how do I take some control of this on my own, I think. And it's like, okay, well, I can see now, because of the wonderful questioning, I can get a sense of I'm seeing how the strategy runs now. And so my brain is just going, well, what if we do this, or what if we do this, what if we do this, what if we flip it upside down, what if we make it, what if we do this, what if, what if there's Mickey Mouse involved, or something like that, and suddenly, oh, fuck, who cares? It's like everything just comes straight down in flat lines. It's like... So do you want to explain that to the viewer?
So you have certain representations of this particular concern you have, and from what you've said, the image was in color.
Yep, it was.
It wasn't so clear. As you moved slightly towards it, there was this heightened sense that you described before.
It just went again. It just went. It literally just went on. It's driving itself now.
It's driving itself. Somehow we've got to get it back.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, good luck. I can now ride that bike. I'm not going to fall off anymore. Forget it. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
Interesting metaphor. But anyway. Oh no. How to lose it.
Are we going to publish this one?
Of course. So what Aaron has done is because he's masterful in this technology, he's played with sensory representations. And he's changed color, he's changed orientation of what he's seeing. And what happens when you change internal representations, what you see and what you hear and what you feel, if you change them, you will change the effect.
The internal physiological or emotional response,
Your physiological response will change because our original response is in relation to how we originally perceived this concern, and Aaron is changing how he originally perceived it. He changed its color, changed its orientation, it's flipped it. As soon as you do these things, it'll change your physiological response. So what's happened is gone for Aaron because he's changed the original relationship.
And then I throw in what I notice has just happened out there is thrown in a resourceful state image. So I've swished it as well. Without the sound effects. We could add that if we want.
I'm sure they were there.
Yeah. Don't even go there. So what that means is that when it flatlined, that's not necessarily a resourceful state. And so what I wanted, unconsciously, my higher intention was perceived that what that old behavior that I've been working on would... You still there, Keith? Okay. Great. Yep. Sorry about that, viewers. It's the cable through the ditch that separates the two countries. So, I mean,
we just need your video. Can you get video back?
Yeah, sure. Are we back?
Oh, yeah. Don't disappear altogether. Okay, there you are.
Right. So what can often happen when we shift something like this is it can flatline, and what I was realizing while this process was going on was that there was actually a higher intention behind this compulsion. It seems that that's what it might have been. It definitely was, and that was a sense of inner calm. And so what I've unconsciously done, and possibly partly consciously, is generated an image to replace the flatline with, which is an image of myself in that state of calm resourcefulness. So So rather than, because what could happen is I could unconsciously still want that calm, so generate some other compulsion to replace it, which can happen. So instead of that, why not just design what I want, and how would I represent that to myself internally? And that is, for me anyway, a mental image of, where I can picture myself in literally the same space in that higher intention state of calm, resourceful. And that's about all.
Okay, so is Aaron over there in a calm, resourceful state?
Yeah, kind of in life size, standing there actually, and the image is a little bit bigger, well, actually significantly bigger than what the original image is, and there isn't a feeling of compulsion with that. There's actually a feeling of just calmness with that, which I quite like.
Is that Aaron in one of the contexts in which it used to happen?
No, it would be Aaron prior. Yeah, so it would be contextualized.
Just before.
Yeah, but it would be kind of prior, leading up to. Yeah.
Okay. So it's just before a particular context that before you would have walked into and had the other reaction, the other response.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's prior. Yeah. Do me a favor and step into that calm, Aaron.
Yep, felt that straight away.
Nice. So make sure you're embodied. You're looking through his eyes. You're hearing through his ears. You're in his body. You're Aaron in a context which is just before entering a context that's very similar to one where you used to have the old reaction, and now you've got the calm.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the immediate response is, gee, look what's over there, which is, but not in the direction. So it's in a different direction, but it's more like, it's kind of like a funny way of saying, well, actually, there are other ways to experience this resourceful state of calm. And then what I notice, actually, they're not out, these potential choices are not outside of me anymore. So I suddenly just recognize that I'm bringing that state to the context, as opposed to wanting the context to catalyze me into a state of that calm. So it's kind of, which is what really NLP is all about, is that sense of self, I don't like the word control, what would you call it? Self management, or self-awareness, or self, I don't know. Is it self anything? I don't know. Choices.
It's a tricky one. It's a relationship between conscious and unconscious. As long as there's a dialogue, a sharing, an exchange, you can work together towards what you want.
Yeah.
So maybe working together.
Yeah.
To achieve something. Yeah. So for the viewer, you were in certain contexts which each had similarities.
Yeah.
You were compelled by the context.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to find it actually now. I'm trying to find the...
That's right, I'm just telling the story, the backstory.
Yeah.
So if you went into these contexts, there was the hope that the context would give you something. Now, you've switched it around. You're taking something into the context. You're giving something to the context. Where you used to be triggered before, now you can take this calm sense into the context.
And what it says to me straight away is that I can bring a more coherent and truer, a truer filter, a more beneficial filter to any of those contexts. So rather than stepping and going, oh, what can I get? I'm stepping in and going, what can I bring? What can I give to this? What can I... And when that comes in, well, I realize, well, if getting involved in that, actually, I'm not giving anything to that, and there's no reciprocity in it. It's just and there never was actually. That was that mistake of the intellect, really. But,
okay, so if you can go into that just prior to the context. You're in Aaron, he's calm. There's a sense of, what can I bring to this?
Understanding comes to mind straight away. actually.
Okay.
And what that does is it removes any sense of past judgment on the behavior or the compulsion or whatever, because it's not that there was fault, it was just that there was a mistake, kind of a sense of not knowing, you know.
You're in habit. You're in automatic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no judgment here. Hell, we all do habits.
Yeah, but you
But
know
as
what I'm
soon as we
saying.
become
Because,
aware of them.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, there's that kind of cultural thing around. Oh, I shouldn't. You know. Ooh. I mean, you know, whatever it might be, smoking even. Like, oh, shouldn't. Oh, that was so bad. I was such a bad person doing that. Yada yada. You know.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, just got a picture. You know those wind-up teeth? Yeah. Yada yada yada. Did you know there's a really funny story about that? That guy who invented those, there was a story about someone who met the son of that guy. The son is one of the wealthiest guys in the world, and the wealth comes from the dad who invented those teeth.
Amazing.
When those teeth came out in the 20s or 30s, whenever it was so utterly successful that he became a billionaire. And then invested his money. And so when people ask him, where does your money come from? He goes, well, my dad invented wind-up chatter teeth. And they go, bullshit. No, seriously, that's how it happened. How funny would that be? It's not like, you know, my dad invented, you know, space rockets. It's like chattering teeth. It'd be like the rubber chicken. Dad invented the rubber chicken.
Ever since he's been trying to think of something better to do.
For the life of him.
How do you improve on that? The sniffing nose? What works?
You imagine it winded up on little legs. I digress. But that's a nice state interrupt. But that's what I had. I had the yada 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 yada. You know, it's not which is
yeah. Okay. So if you can get back into Aaron, get back into his body, into that calm, in the context which is just prior to one that is similar to what you used to do in the past. There's a sense of understanding, and just notice how your whole body is in terms of what you can offer, what you can bring to this context that you're about to step into.
Well, I'm not stepping into it.
Well, you're about to.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the context is changing, because the context was quite.
That's good.
Yeah, the context was quite manifest from my own perceptions as well.
Yeah.
You know, so
this is something you're about to step into.
Yeah.
So the context is changing. The one that you in the past you would have stepped into. So the question is, do you want to step into that context with this resourceful state, this calm understanding, a sense of what can I bring to this? Even though the context is changing, do you want to step into it?
Not by default, but what I do get a sense of, which I think is more useful, is there's a sense of, very clear sense of choice, and my primary kind of sense is having a query and then deciding to go in another direction, or deciding to do something that retains this. And then there's also the ecology of, okay, well, if I engage in that thing that used to be so compulsive, can I retain the sense of calm resourcefulness? And then there's a query around that, and then I'll picture myself afterwards of the possibility, and I check that, and then take another direction. So it might, and they're all, but then it becomes more of a creative impulse or a creative response to context, which then there's an ecology query around, well, how does this look and feel in totality? Is this actually consistently able to generate that calm resourcefulness? Am I able to continue creating that calm resourcefulness as I move? I think that's a more valuable place rather than going, it's like, no, that way, Because I remember working with a guy once who I worked with for smoking, and I've talked to a number of colleagues about this sort of scenario where someone started smoking because it was the only way they could generate the kind of mental context required that was socially acceptable to have a rest. But then the smoking became habit after the trigger was removed. So, for example, someone whose partner was dying, this true story partner was dying of cancer, the only time they would remove themselves from being with this person over the 3 or 4 weeks of their passing, which took a long time, was very, very uncomfortable for everyone, was to give himself a smoke break. And that might only happen 3 times a day. So in a sense, there was a resourceful aspect to that in that. But once the partner had passed away, the habit remained. But what he found, because I talked to him a while later, was every now and then there was a part of him that really just wanted to reconnect with that, so he'd go and have a smoke. But he had no habitual requirement for it. There was no need. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a...
Yeah, you had the choice.
Well, he had choice, which kind of, and I believe this can happen for people who have been classed as alcoholic or whatever, is that, and certainly some people, some levels of drug usage, if they can have this kind of quality of what we're doing, then there's a chance, outside of certain kinds of drugs, there's a chance of being able to have choice, having some kind of sense that, well, actually at this point in time in my life, in this context, this would be an okay thing to do. Whereas if daily on a regular basis, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, Richard Bandler once said, the cured alcoholic is not someone who stops drinking. It's someone who says, I choose to do that now because it might be enjoyable, but is not compelled.
No, and that really reshapes that whole perception that we're often told about, which is similar to depression, which is that alcoholism is a disease. Because it's actually... And
they're trained to say, I'm an alcoholic.
Well, yeah, which is...
So I can't have that anymore, but I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, and I always will be.
Always will be.
And the real challenge with that is there's no choice, and you're a victim of some unconscious process. Now, what's really important here, same with depression, anxiety, those sorts of things, that if someone has a chronic experience of depression over time, they will start to demonstrate in their bloods and their metabolistic, in their physiological response, they will start to show changes in chemicals
and brain activity,
which can then in certain contexts be classed as a disease. But what we know is that if you are able to restructure the mechanism that is creating that psychological problem, then those hormones, chemicals, whatever, will flip 180 and back to norm. And I think that's the thing. Yes, it can be classed as a disease if you're looking for the markers that we look for when we're looking for a disease.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important, because I sometimes feel a sense of compassion for those who have been told this, but without the deeper story around, well, we class this as a disease now because you're running all the chemical stuff that says this is what we call it when we look in the DSM-5 and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This is called depression now. But we're also not telling you the other part of is actually if we can psychologically shift this structurally, then all of those markers will disappear and you will not be doing this thing called depression anymore.
Yeah.
And
it's the danger of cause effect, isn't it? This is causing your experience.
Yeah.
If you don't take into account the time frame in which this habituation occurred, which will change physiology and metabolism.
And it can do very quickly.
Yeah, so if you're here and just testing this, you've not tested the backstory. So the giveaway is, well, I wasn't depressed back here. How did you get here? So in terms of brain plasticity, if we play around with how the brain represents things, is there a shift? If there is, it's not fixed. You're not this thing, because you can play around and make a difference.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just on a kind of a parallel to this, I had or was doing unconsciously, I was doing asthma since the age of 4 until I was about 26 or 27, and I did it really well. And sometimes I was, you know, I was an expert at asthma, especially when I was living in central North Island, New Zealand, in a place called Hamilton. The highest incidence of asthma in the Western world at the time I was living there, which is a good 20 odd years ago, maybe more. And but I got rid of it in one day. The interesting thing was, before I did that, I was, you know, studying NLP and I was studying hypnosis. I was doing a psych degree, and I also was at the time, the partner that I was living with, she was doing social psychology, and so we put together a little research study, and we advertised, and we got asthmatics. And we did this, you know, off the books research study, but it was all properly written up and everything. And I think I had about 10 or 12 asthmatics, and they all gave their time freely, and every single one of them had a trauma. And the trauma was one where they went, oh! You know, it was like, the best one was where the guy was out of his body, and he'd just been in an accident. He was out of his body, and he was looking down, and the ambulance driver put the sheet over his head and said, "This one's gone." He looked down and goes, "No, I'm not!" and is suddenly back in his body and goes, "Ah!" like this. And then the next thing he hears is, "Fucking hell, I reckon this one's still alive." But because asthma isn't about whether we can breathe in, it's whether it's the constriction of breathing out.
Okay.
Yeah, so the breathing out, the bronchial tubes become very tight, and we can't breathe out. And so you'll see asthmatics like this, but they can't, you know, it's constricted to breathe out. And a number of times, if I hadn't had the drug at the right time, I probably would have expired. But what I'm getting at is that, so I had all the markers and I had all the bloods and everything, but on the day I got rid of it, all of those disappeared. You know, and it was a change in my psychological interpretation of what was going on with the symptomology that released it.
Yeah.
And all of the other, possibly all the other disease aspects connected to it. And that was the similar. I had one client in this research study. She was a girl of about 10 or 12, and she was on a nebulizer once or twice a week. And nebulizers you shouldn't have more than once or twice a year because they're hormonal. And after the study, she was down to one, maybe a month, because we were able to talk about and work with the actual unconscious trauma that occurred. And in this instance, she had no idea what it was, but we were able to work with it, even though she had no idea. And it shifted, which is so.
Very nice.
Where were we? I mean, I only give those examples. It's not because, you know, it's more sharing examples of the mind-body ability to make these changes. And I'm sure you have a number of these kinds of experiences yourself. And and I think that's really important, because I think what you've just helped me to shift, because I'm trying to find out where the hell it is, because it's not there anymore, is except for the, you know, I feel like that calmness is something that isn't actually now working on me physiologically. So I can feel my physiology has for want of a better word, softened with respect to this whole thing.
Calm will do that.
Calm will do that, yeah. Thanks, Dr. Keith.
Whoa, we haven't tested yet. Let's test. Nice little pattern interrupt, but we're back. And so I want to do a couple of things. So if you step back into Aaron, into that place just before a context that's similar to those in the past, and what happens automatically?
I kind of notice I'm kind of down here somewhere. I'm kind of looking, I think I'm looking physiologically for some kind of connection in terms of like, because I can't kind of get the picture, but I'm holding the calm. I'm getting a sense that I want to generate something new to do, and it's more over in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, yeah, which feels, it's kind of a little bit kind of, I mean, it's a long-term thing, that we've just worked on, and I'm just kind of recalibrating that thing. So if I go back again, so I'll try. Actually, I want to future pace it. So if I go out into the future, into a future potential time, I just immediately get a real feeling of wanting to do something creative with my time and my brain.
Yeah.
Just want to do something more. And I think the real key to this is bringing the state that I want to the activity, rather than hoping that the activity will generate that for me.
Okay. So what I would like you to do now is go into a future. In that future, I want you to put any particular individuals right in front of you who in the past were part of the sequence of events that led to that unresourceful state. What happens when you put that individual or individuals in front of you?
Get a bit of a blank, actually. I don't know. I don't know how that relates, actually. Because I think the context was self-driven, so there wasn't anyone externally. I know I could probably. No. No.
Okay, so the original thing that you wanted, step into a future situation and want it.
Well, it doesn't make any sense to want it. It kind of just doesn't actually. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not calm, resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not calm.
What is it?
Distractive. Possibly dissociative.
You feel a sense that you're leaving?
Yeah, kind of like going into some kind of other space that isn't really relevant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. As we were talking about earlier on, we've just got Netflix. We're slow on the uptake, of course. In the backwaters of New Zealand. Probably the only people in our neighbourhood that haven't got Netflix. But not that we'd know. But I was watching something the other day, and there were not a long-term contextual story, but there was a sense of how there is so much to watch on Netflix as one example, and then you've got the others, the YouTubes, and you've got all the other things, the paid for and the not paid for. And what occurred to me, and they're very compelling. I mean, they're some of them are incredibly well made, and great actors, who are just getting constant work, I imagine, not having to wait around for someone to, finance something, just getting work, which must be a blessing in this, in that industry. Imagine if we had, Netflix for New Zealand and Australia, where, New Zealand actors and Australian actors were getting constant work, for Australian versions of the same thing, or New Zealand. And because a lot of New Zealand people cross the ditch to Australia to work, or cross to America to work, because there's just not enough population to make it work here. And but I was just thinking, it was just because of mirror neurons and all these different things. We laugh and everything, but there was a real sense of, there's this thing with Netflix that we just occurred to us last night, that the show will finish and then it'll go to credits, and then the show will minimize itself, and then the next episode is right there waiting. And I'm going, and my wife goes, what's happening there? And I just immediately said, well, they just want you to keep watching. I'm going, and
Because who watches credits?
No one watches credits, but
legally the credits
Wendy
have to be
loves
rolled.
credits. My wife loves credits. She loves watching the credits. Who was that? Blah, blah, blah. Because she's a real reader. She loves to read stuff, which is fine. She loves movies with subtitles, whereas I'm the guy there. I'm like the Irishman, just reading the subtitles. But what occurred to me, and it'd be really interesting to your reflection on this, is it felt like a dissociative process, constantly going on to the next one and the next one, and dissociating into for the viewer, my daughter is going off to a birthday party. She's just left. I'm constantly dissociating into another character or into this kind of characterization, because there's that thing in the subconscious where we don't really differentiate reality from fantasy. The body just starts to resonate with whatever that's how we can get really fearful or really excited or really laugh our guts out or whatever. But fundamentally there would seem to be this real removal from myself into this ongoing ongoing sequence of the next show and the next show, and it was just actually really easy to just dump myself into that and lose myself. And I was thinking, wow, I don't want to do that. And that was really interesting because at the end of what you've just suggested, I've actually recognized that I've already had a calm resourcefulness tested, and that was last night when we got to the end of a movie we watched. Adam Sandler movie. Oh my god, it was so disgusting. But anyway, and funny. But we got to the end of that, credits shrunk, and there was the next movie there, and I'm going, I'm not up for this. I want to control what I watch. I don't feel calm and resourceful in this situation. So I guess I was recognizing was I'd already run the calm resourceful, but I'd run it last night on a different kind of context, which is actually quite similar, I think, in some ways. God, it was a babble, wasn't it? But what's your interpretation on that? Because we talk a lot about dissociation. We talk a lot about coming back and how am I feeling right now? Who is the me that's feeling this? And what does this very compelling experience of media, what is it doing to our ability to recognize what I really want? Do I actually want this? Do I want to watch another show? Do I want to, repeat this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, big question. Jeez. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the cleverness of it. We've often talked about representation. So if you have the credits, what used to happen was that the credits would be the entire screen. And someone like Wendy might read them. I've read credits. I've known to read credits as well. But I've also been, there have been times where what's the credits? It's the time that it's ended. You move on to something else. But it's almost like a swish, isn't it?
It's a swish. It's a submodality swish.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. So they shrink it to small, but there's something directly behind it, which is what we would do. We would shrink something to small, but have the desired thing behind it. So if this goes small, whoomp, that's what we want. So they've done the same thing. They're generating
a compulsion and a desire, but you can still recognize that's the thing I've just seen. But we're kind of done with that. It was funny, but this is going to be great. Look at that. It's bright and big and
Yeah. So it's a very smooth transition. It wasn't binary. It was, let's shrink this and what's this next thing? So it's a stimulation, but it's a nice smooth transition. So as you pointed out, where's the point where I get to choose? Well, that's ended. I think I'll go and wash the dishes or do something else.
Go and have a pee.
Go and have a pee. Yeah, well, you just spent 2 hours in front of a screen. You might need to go to the toilet. So it's clever.
It is clever.
Are we clever enough to see it?
Well, that's the query, And I mean, it's the same with YouTube. You sit there, and while the movie's going, until you full screen it, while the movie's going, there's a whole bunch of next up, which are algorithmically connected to or similar to, or in some way to what you like to watch, and that's how it's designed. It's the same with Google searches. The challenge with that is it's still not me choosing. See, the thing that interested me, we were watching one series, and it's a comedy series, I don't know, it's just about some police station, something 99, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and really funny. And we were up to about 4th episode or 5th episode, but I'm going, okay, so same context, same people, same characterizations, no learnings, no deep understandings, repetition. And then we looked underneath to go, well, how many episodes are there? 14 episodes. I'm going, no, I'm not going to get through another 2. Because it's funny. Like, it's laugh out loud, belly laugh funny. Some of it. But it's the characterizations, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like good comedy where they expand the submodalities of the character. So they're their extreme version of a normal person. So if he's fat, he's fat and grotty. If he's egotistical, he's egotistical to the extreme and narcissistically ignorant of the ego and all that sort of stuff. So it's great. But there's a point where, okay, but it's like any of these things, it's like we started my daughter wanted me to watch Stranger Ways or something strange with teenagers. One gets lost, blah, blah.
Yep.
And I'm just watching the first one. I'm going, oh, yeah, good acting, blah, blah, blah. But, okay, so it's going to take the entire series or the entire 2 or 3 series before he's found. And there's classic, it's either a CIA cover-up because they're doing experiments or blah. And you get all this in the first episode. It's like, okay, well, I'm not in. I'm just not even interested. It's like X-Files again, but without Mulder, So it's like, and there's a sense, but I could imagine just being totally absorbed by the content, because what I'm looking at is structure. It's like, going to another Star Wars movie. Oh my God. It's like going to Lord of the Rings. I mean, God forbid they make another one of that sort of shit. Or it's just going to the next, it's all reluctant hero, a fight, there'll be a love interest, almost there, but then the love interest finds out that someone's telling a lie, then they fall back, and then finally, it's just the same mythology all the way through that we have since the Dark Age, and it's like, well, whoo, no learnings, no deeper understandings, no emergence, Keith.
Well, what comes to mind as you're describing this, because I'm being drawn into it, going, oh. For me personally, I have certain likes, let's say on YouTube videos, and I watch certain things, whether it's a lecture or something to do with science or technology or mechanisms. There'll be a point where I'll get a physical out. There's something in my body that says, to hell with this.
What's over there?
I've got to move. Because I used to be able to do it for hours and hours, and I developed a sense. Enough is enough. So I'm fascinated with people who can sit in front of a screen for hours and hours and hours. I very quickly get this physical, it's unpleasant. I can't, because if I watch a few more seconds, it increases. That unpleasantness increases. That physical sensation gets worse and worse. I know I have to move. So I have the ability to be in touch with my unconscious saying, this is threshold, time to move. Are people, sorry, we've got something over my screen. Are people ignoring those physiological signals because they have to be there? The unconscious has its own ecology. We must move. We've got to do something different. If we're continually drawn into the same sort of content, habitually just drawn in, we lose ourselves. We lose our sense of self.
That's what I'm saying, and I think that's. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think
no, go for it.
That's the essential part, and is that we lose ourselves. There's a great piece of writing by Dr. Ernest Rossi, and the viewer can look him up, and it's called the symptom path to enlightenment. And all it is, he's a neurologist and a hypnotherapist and a surgeon and a doctor and all these different things. But fundamentally, he's an NLP master trainer and developer of NLP process and stuff. But he worked, blah, blah, blah. So what he talks about, though, is the symptomology, the call from the body, or the unconscious, is the path to our enlightenment. Meaning, so if I'm sitting in front of YouTube and I'm starting to get uncomfortable, my body is going, actually, this is no longer serving us. And that body sensation is the sensation that must be listened to, because the body is the vessel of the mind, of the thought, of the awareness. And if this thing starts to suck, go downhill, there's no more awareness. And I know that with my experience with concussion is that, and many listeners or watchers will have a similar experience with an illness or whatever. When the body isn't functioning properly, everything else falls to the wayside. There's almost a hierarchical balance that's been messed up. So he talks about, like, when we get that subtle first inkling that there's something wrong, that's the moment of potential enlightenment. That's the moment. So if we feed back to and go, okay, well, I'm getting this feeling, I'm a bit uncomfortable, maybe I need to move away. As soon as we do that, we're building the map of discourse, or the connection with the deeper unconscious, and we're evolving, we're emerging. Now, enlightenment is a word used to describe it's not something in this situation it's a verb, it's not a noun. So enlightenmenting, I guess, would be a better way. So we're constantly growing and blah, blah, blah. It's not like a finished product.
Yeah.
And I guess if I'm sitting there and I'm just so hooked in, if I am detached and so hooked into these movies, which I know I've done in my past and find myself doing even now, is I've lost contact with my natural rhythm, with the unconscious messaging system, which means I'm potentially generating illness. Yeah.
This is important.
Really important.
Physical, mental, if we use the word. Can people find themselves in a depressed state because they're not allowing themselves to be sensitive to these signals, these messages?
Well, can we be sensitive to them if we've dissociated enough? If I'm in a Facebook,
yeah, of course. Yeah. Now you're
if I'm in a Facebook feed and I'm just scrolling through looking for the next, hit of dopamine, which is what it does. Oh, that's good, I'll read that, and then I'll come back to the Facebook. Oh, it's changed. What's new? And then I'll go through again. I mean, basically, we're on a slot machine just pumping dopamine, which in the end will lead to depression. So. But I've dissociated out into that experience because that's making it happen for me in my mind. So do I have the ability to be physiologically self-aware if I'm associated out into that, cybernetic, or cyberspace of reality?
Yeah. Well, the attention... all of our attention is taken up, and it can lead to a disconnection of physical sensation. So, for our viewers, if they recognize that this is the behavior that they're doing, that they're finding themselves lost in social media, and they're finding themselves feeling they're on a downward slope, how can they get out?
Well, the challenge with the downward slope is, once again, that word that phrase, psychological gradualization, which is, we're gradually, for the poor frog that's put in the cold water and is slowly coming to the boil, has no idea that it's been boiled alive. And so we don't really know, because I woke up with this morning. It was really a real clear sense of, okay, well, this is interesting. Okay, so how much are we, because I'm not doing it as much anymore, how much are we reliant now, this conversation going on all over the world, reliant on the thing that we carry for most of our functions, the remembering, the timing, the dates, all that sort of stuff, how we connect with each other. How much are we relying on that, and how much have we dissociated out of our own capacity to rely on ourselves? And when does it become that we can't function without that? And so we have no sense of self. Let's just talk about internal calendars. If I have an internal sense of timing, but that's been slowly, gradually replaced by an ever more elegant and algorithmically designed feature of diarying, then I'm going to rely less and less on my cognitive ability to know where I am in time and space. I'm just going to keep referring. I mean, more and more people are just picking up their phone to find the time, rather than, using a watch. Everything's in there. I mean, that's not such a good example because it's still, the whole idea of time is a little bit made up. But, I mean, in terms of, you're still looking outside to find out where the time is. It's not such a good example. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I've had a number of people contact me lately in other ways, saying, I've been trying to contact you through this way, and I go, well, I'm not there anymore. I don't do it, and it's very destabilizing for them because they haven't considered that. Well, that there are emails and phone calls. You can actually you can actually talk to someone. Digressing, but I mean, I think what this is, I'm going to actually just feed back into what we're working on. And what we were working on was, I was running a compulsion, I've realized. And the compulsion was towards something, or I could mentally bring that thing closer. And now I can't find that compulsion. I have just a sense of, when I think about the potential context, I just feel a sense of calm resourcefulness. And what that means is I can now choose how I want to spend my creative time, and how that creative time is going to help me maintain this already existing sense of calm resourcefulness. Bloody wordy. But I think, as opposed to searching for that calm awareness, that calm resourcefulness, or whatever it is I'm searching for.
And the automatic nature of a compulsion. We don't choose at any point in time consciously, I want to be compelled towards X. And for me, the fascination is, well, if that was an automatic behavior, what we want is the new choice to be automatic as well. To when we go into similar contexts in the future, that calm is automatically available to us. We don't have to go and choose it consciously. So if you pop inside and ask your unconscious mind, and this is a way of getting signals about the willingness that the unconscious mind wants to play a part in the process. So if you go inside and ask your unconscious mind,
I've got that already.
Yeah. So he's willing to do this for you, the calm, the understanding, the sense of what can I bring to this, and he says yes, he's willing to do this for you. I think it's a sense. I love that.
Yeah, it just seems to be, and also there's a little dialogue that comes with it, which is that just makes more sense. It's just a logical progression, really.
Yeah. So when you end up in these similar contexts in your will, there's a spontaneous sense that you have more available to you, and you don't have that, I've got to do this thing that I used to do.
And it's I just had this thought, which is kind of funny. You know how the Netflix box goes up to the left, which is where normally wild people put their past. Oh no, that's in the past now. Oh, what's there?
Of course.
And if you think about
these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, and when you think about where most of the menus are, there's kind of a sense. I mean, most people are right-handed anyway, but mostly to the right, up to the right, drop down. You know, which future, drop down. What am I going to look at next? It's really fascinating. It's just beautifully designed. Beautifully designed. I mean, you know, there's a whole psychology around industrial design and ergonomics. You know, I mean, which has been around for you know, a good century. But I think, you know, what we know now about the mind and also what the algorithms must be teaching us around about how we operate. You know, and how much of that, possibly even at a design level, is happening kind of almost kind of automatically, you know.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
We might call it there.
So just,
oh no, carry on.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I just want to
please, sorry.
Just to give viewers a little something. If they recognise that they're being drawn into social media, and that they're you know, they're on that downward slope, one strategy they can use is, before they even go into social media, because we have to go to sleep eventually, before they go into social media, take an inventory of their body. They'll be in some resourceful state because they haven't gone onto it yet. And just a little question to themselves, to their unconscious mind: are you happy to give me a signal that's strong enough to tell me that I've had enough? Wherever that signal is in the body, but it has to be strong enough, because we know how compelling these things are to stay on for hours and hours and hours. And before you even go to the social media, you just get a sense: are you willing to pop me out? Give me a really strong signal, and to get that signal straight away before we actually go into any sort of social media. So you get that signal, say thank you.
Sense of testing it.
Yeah, test it first. Thank you, and then shake it off, shake your body, and then go into your social media, and you'll be sensitive to, oh, now's the time to get off.
And the trick then is get off. You know, so the next part of that is then act on that. And then I think what's even really important as well is, once you've listened and you've acted, get off and congratulate yourself.
Yes.
You know, actually give yourself some real positive feedback, which says, yeah, actually, well done, I feel good about this, and then go and do something that is in response to that positive feeling. You know, or it might even actually give yourself that toilet break that you've actually meaning to do for the last half hour, but you've been so engrossed that you've forgotten, you haven't listened to your body. I mean, fundamentally, I mean, how often can that happen? You know, we actually don't even listen to those very important physiological callings. I think that's a really good thing. Another thing that could also happen, because I know historically, in working with this with a few people, is sometimes also we can find ourselves at the Facebook or thinking about it from an unresourceful state. Yeah, so sometimes I think maybe a question is stop. You know, as soon as you get a sense of, I'm going to check Facebook, stop for a moment and query where the question is, how is this going to satisfy me, or how is this useful for me? How is this going to give me, is this going to give me what I really want right now? Yeah, and because sometimes I think I'm getting a sense, and certainly from a lot of the interviews and a lot of the research they're doing in social media, is that a lot of people are going there already maybe feeling a bit under-resourced, because you know, if we are fully engaged in consumerism and stuff, that's not giving us much, and so we'll be searching for something, and you know, Facebook is just mental emotional consumerism at the absolute, you know, slot machine kind of level. And so if we're getting that impulse to sit down, we really need to, you know, if we can't run these things that you and I have been doing, we need to actually say, well, actually, how is this going to serve me in a positive way?
Yeah.
What if I have sit down?
Which is really nice. Well, what you've done is really, really nice. If in a resourceful state of mind to begin with, then chances are you're going to go into this thing for those dopamine hits, those little hits of fascination. The promise of being stimulated, because we might not be in that good place to start with. So that's very nice.
Yeah, it's a tough call though, because it is. Yeah, and
it is
because we won't always. Well, part of us will go, well, actually, no, it's not going to serve us, but what else are we going to do? And so what I would suggest then is that's the next video. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, I think, what I'd suggest, NLP isn't all about just thinking shit, it's actually action shit as well. And it could be that, well, if you're on a computer or on your thing, open up a note taker or open up something and write how you're feeling down.
Oh.
Right, in that moment go, well, actually, it's not going to serve me. So what if I do something creative?
Yeah. Lovely.
Which is a response, because the brain body system does want to do creative work, and how we've been kind of sold this internet stuff is it's really creative, it's creatively connecting with others, and and it's not. So what we want, it's just not. Turning it off is creative, because then it means creates a space of quiet, and then you can do something else. But fundamentally is grab a pen and a piece of paper. I have pen and paper by my computer all the time. And I have note takes. I use Evernote and those sorts of things, and something you can speak into now, and they are perfect at dictation. So if you're not getting a positive feedback that going on Facebook is going to work, well then test something, and that is say, okay, well, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes of doing something else. So we're not saying walk away, forget it, you're a bad person. We're saying, well, give yourself 5 minutes of doing something else which is creative or mindful, or we sit,
Well, I like your suggestion of write down, how do I feel right now?
Yeah, how do I feel right now? And then
that might not be for everyone, but what it does is it associates you to yourself straight away.
Or what do I want right now?
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
What do I want right now? There's a great book called The Path of Least Resistance, I think it's called. Is that what it's called? I have to find it. Oh, damn. Yeah, I think it's called Path of Least Resistance.
Yeah.
But it's all about models of how to do this. What is the easiest way to actually get what we want? Well, the first answer to that is, what do I actually want right now? And you ask most people, they don't know. What do I actually want right now? Don't know. Oh, I need to sit down and work that out. Because if you're on Facebook, you're going to be told what you want right now. If you're on YouTube, you're going to be told.
Yes.
If you're on the internet, you're on Pinterest, you're going to be told what you want right now. And you won't even know if that's an ad or not. You'll just click it, go, oh, that looks great, I'll buy that. Oh, that's brilliant. And then wicked. But you'll be told. So what we have to do is, well, what do I want right now? And
lovely.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So this has been very good, Keith.
Perfect. Yeah. Enjoyable.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So if anyone wants to contact us, nlpconversations@gmail.com, or go to what's your website again?
At the moment, I'm between websites, so I need to create one.
Go to lulu.com and look up Keith Gilbert, or you can find me on aaronm.co.nz. If you've got any questions, queries, and polite and constructive comments, which is not to dictate what you should say in the comments section, but it's a free world. All right.
It is.
Ciao.
Until next time.